Welcome to Just a Cup on Bleav. I am Bryan Fetzer. We are going to have an organic conversation about the world's greatest athletes and the individuals that help them along on their journey. And today I have with me Paul Doyle, who is the head of DMG, Doyle Management Group. And we're going to talk a little bit about a meet that they have coming up. And we're going to talk about a bunch of other things. But Paul, welcome. It's exciting to have you on. I mean, you are a low-key legend in the sport of track and field, I would say. No question about it.
Thanks, Fats. Thanks for embarrassing me right off the get-go.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I mean, I don't think people hear agents in sports all the time. You know, you hear the Drew Rosenhauses and all the different things, and there's all these kind of connotations. And I don't think people understand the difference of a sports agent for track and field as opposed to what like an NFL or an NBA guy does. It's similar, but also has a lot of extra steps to it, right?
There's a lot more work involved. There are similarities because it's all about relationships and building trust and relationships with athletes and whatnot. But the reality is the workload in track and field is so much further beyond what the other pro sports are, and even actually other Olympic sports. Drew Rosenhaus might take a client and, obviously he has to take care of him and hold his hand through a lot of things. But at the same time, he negotiates a contract once every 4 years. With my athletes, I have about 1,000 negotiations a year with the athletes. It's every competition an athlete does that has to be negotiated. We have to book travel. We have to handle media around their appearances and whatnot. So there's a lot more that's involved in it. And then, of course, there's the marketing side of things, too. And that's where we're different from a lot of other Olympic sports. You look at Octagon and Peter Carlisle and Brandon Swibel and some of these guys that work with a lot of the other Olympic athletes in marketing. They don't handle the schedule of athletes. All they do is handle sponsorship and marketing deals and servicing those type of contracts and whatnot, but they're not doing the day-to-day traveling with the athletes and going to their competition schedule. I think oftentimes, like in swimming and gymnastics, they're very defined competition schedules, and it's handled by the federations and whatnot. Right. So track and field, we've got a lot more on our plate. We don't sleep very much.
I know, right? I mean, how many athletes do you have within the group?
We have 50 like full-time clients that we manage, and then there's dozens others that we kind of help out in a pinch and that sort of thing.
So I mean, give me a couple other things. Like what are some things, like if you listed like the things that you do as an agent for track and field? Like what are some? I used to travel. What are some other stuff?
Yeah, so we book the travel. I mean, everything and nothing is off the table. Like Clayton Murphy's Jeep got stolen last week, and I'm helping advise him on new car purchases and things like that, and dealing with the insurance companies and that sort of thing. And I joke one time I used to have an athlete that if a light bulb went out in her apartment, I got a phone call, right?
Right.
No, but there's with the real job. I mean, I kind of look at the track and field agency side of things, and there's sort of three main areas. It's the one, negotiating a shoe contract, which is sort of it's almost like a team pro contract for other sports, but negotiating the shoe contract, negotiating competition schedules, and then sponsorship and marketing and PR. So that's sort of the main roles, but obviously nothing else is off the table. I've got a lot of athletes that like to do different business ideas. So it's helping them on that path, helping athletes transition out of the sport when they're done, and what role are they going to go into? Are they going to stay in the sport or not? And, like I have Courtney Okolo, who's been, an amazing 400 runner, Bowerman Award winner, multi-time medalist and world champion and Olympic medalist. And she's approaching the end of her career, and she's transitioning to what she's going to do next. So she's going to design school, and, she's flipping houses and doing Airbnbs and stuff like that. So it's, helping the athletes in that way. Like, I helped Courtney put in plumbing, the drain line, her new plumbing line to her new Airbnb and stuff like that. So.
Right. I remember, this was way back, but I remember being on a plane with you going to Jamaica, and you having some auto parts for Osafa Powell. that I was like, you're doing what? You're taking him down the. It was
Yes.
like, hey, he didn't have him or couldn't find him down there, so you were bringing someone. I'm like,
I
that's above and
literally
beyond.
in the closet over there, I still have auto parts for Asafa from stuff that through the years. No, he's a total car guy. And I remember one time it was the craziest thing. I had to bring him, what do you call them? Not brake calipers, but the rotors, brake
Okay.
rotors.
Yep.
And he was in Italy. I was in Atlanta, and he needed these in Jamaica, but he was going back to Jamaica shortly after. So I decided, all right, I'll bring him to Italy to give to you to bring back to Jamaica. So I'm getting on my plane, connecting in Rome or something like that, and they call my name up to the counter, and some guy comes out from the tarmac and comes up to see me. He's like, "Are you Mr. Doyle?" I say, "Yes, I am." They say, "Okay, come with me," and we go down onto the tarmac, and I get put in a car. And they don't tell me anything. There was a language barrier there, right? So
Right.
they don't tell me very much. And they're driving me around on the runway, like on the tarmac for like 2 miles. And we get to this back room, and there's my bag. And they say, "Open up the bag." And I open up the bag, and there's these brake rotors. And they're like, "What is this?" And they're heavy. These things, my bag must have weighed 90 pounds that day or whatever. So these brake rotors are in the bag, and they're like, "What is this?" I'm like, they're brakes for a car. And they said, "Oh, okay." And then they zip it up, and I go on my way. They take me back, and I walk right to the plane and right on the plane. They were holding up the plane, but so that's the life we lead. There's nothing, like I said, there's nothing ever off the table.
I mean, I bet you have story upon story upon story of just different. What is one of the oddest things that you've got to experience at an international meet? And that's probably a loaded question, but like something just kind of shocked you that you were like,
Oh boy, I don't know. I mean, Asafa and I could tell stories all day. Actually, we were just a couple weeks ago, got together in Bermuda. He was the ambassador for the Bermuda Grand Prix meet that we were helping host. And oh man, we had a blast. We were just reliving the old days and talking old stories and stuff like that. But no, Asafa and I went through a lot through the years, but I remember, I guess Formula One's hot right now. I remember we were in Budapest. This is like 07 or so, or 07 or 09. I can't remember which. And the Budapest Formula One was on the day after the meet that he was running in. So he wanted to stay. And of course they got him VIP passes and stuff like that. And we ended up going to the, down on the grid and everything before the race. And then we go up and they escort us up into this little VIP box. And I kind of catch a glimpse on the wall as we're walking into the room. And it said President, whoever. And I was like, oh my God, are we watching this with the president of Formula One? And we're sitting there. And the next thing you know, we have about 10 security guards walk in. And it was actually the president of Hungary that we were watching the Formula One with. The president of Hungary and his 9-year-old grandson, and we just his 9-year-old grandson was a swimmer, so we talked training and stuff like that while we're watching the race. And then I kept looking over my shoulder at one of the security detail guys, and he looked at me again and he says, "Paul?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was a Hungarian hammer thrower that used to train at the University of Georgia, and he's now president security detail." So small world.
That is wild. That is,
yeah.
And I mean, track and field is such a unique sport because it's global and it's very individual. I mean, it's not like you're going to a soccer match where, the players are way far away and you don't really get to interact with anything. But in, track and field, I mean, the hammer throwers walk down the street and no one really notices in a lot of places. Sure. I mean, Osafa's, Bolts, Lolo. I mean, there's some people that definitely, get that all the time, but
yeah, for sure.
But it's just a unique sport. So, I mean, let's talk about American Track League, which an amazing concept. Obviously, I think it's incredible, and you've been able to do it, and start because there's really no pro track and field series or anything in the United States, and do that, and you've got a meet coming up. I want to make sure I have it 100% correct. May 31st, which is Friday, in Atlanta, Georgia, at Morehouse College. It's going to be from 5 to 8 p.m. The Edwin Moses Legends Meet, which, I mean, if you know anything about track and field, the Dayton native Edwin Moses is about as big of a name as you can get.
Yeah.
And you guys still got tickets to sale. We'll make sure we put a link in the description, so you can click on it to get tickets. But how did this meet kind of come about? Like, and why is it called the Edwin Moses Legends Meet?
Well, we started the American Track League. This is actually the 11th year of the American Track League, and it still feels like we're in startup. We got PUMA on board as a title sponsor a few years ago, and they've been amazing. But we're really trying to still get this sport off the ground, and we're doing a lot of new things this event. A lot of unique things that haven't been done before, as far as with the broadcast and whatnot. But the whole idea of the Edwin Moses Legends Meet is, of course, Edwin was a legend among legends, right? He's one of the guys that is truly a legend, undefeated for almost 10 years and double Olympic gold and world record and whatnot. Nobody's a bigger legend than Edwin Moses. But there's so many legends and accomplished athletes out of the Atlanta area that have connections to Atlanta that we wanted to honor more than just Edwin. Yes, it's at the Edwin Moses track. He's the namesake of the meet, but we're going to bring in a lot of other legends. Like Gwen Torrance is going to be there, Gail Devers. We're hoping Tommy Smith from the 1968 Olympics is going to be there. Yeah, he's a legend beyond track and field. He's a civil rights legend. And but even more modern legends like Dwight Phillips and Terrence Trammell, Alan Johnson's going to be there. So we've Veronica Campbell-Brown. So we're reaching outside of the U.S. too. Veronica lived and trained in Atlanta for a while. So all these people that have connections to Atlanta that are legends. Angelo Taylor, two-time Olympic champ in the 4 hurdles. So we've got a lot of those athletes coming out that we're going to honor, and they're excited about it. Over the past few weeks, all these legends are getting pumped about this and excited to see like a true professional meet in Atlanta. We have had bits and pieces of meets in Atlanta before, but never a true full meet like this. I feel like this one is just going to be off the charts better compared to what we've done in the past. So PUMA was really excited about getting back into the Atlanta market as well. We didn't have a meet in Atlanta last year at all, so they really wanted us to put it on here. And it fits really well in the schedule, this date. So typically the American Track League meets have been a little bit more sprint focused because that's where my specialties are and right. But this time around, we're having to keep people off, trying to turn people. We have to turn people away because there's just not enough room in the races for athletes. So
who are some individuals that are going to be actually competing in the meet?
So we've got Bobby Kersey's whole group is coming. So we have Sydney McLaughlin coming and Kenny Harrison. We'll have Vashti Cunningham and Randall Cunningham will be here. We're going to actually honor Randall as a legend as well. He's a legend in football, but he's one heck of a high jump coach as well.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to be honoring Randall as well. Like Heather McLean and Addie Wiley in the 1500. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The Australian guy who finished 3rd at his trials this is his Olympic trials essentially. Right. Oh, wow. So he finished 3rd at their Olympic trials, but he is 0.14 off the standard for the 1500. And the guys who finished 4th and 5th behind him at their Olympic trials do have the standard. So if he doesn't hit the standard, he doesn't get to go to the Olympics. So we're setting up that race for him to really try and hit the standard. So we're looking for a 3:30, 3:50. So that's one heck of a fast time. So
yeah, that's moving pretty good.
But all throughout we've got good solid fields everywhere you look. Peter Bowl from Australia is coming too. He's running the 800 as well. So yeah, just great fields all across.
I mean, you're always kind of on the precipice of doing something that's very unique and kind of outside the normal, I would say. And I think, I 100% agree that's how you grow the sport. One of the things you guys are doing with the broadcast itself is very unique with how the coverage is going to be. Can you talk about the coverage of the meet? Because I think it's way different than what I would say would be quote unquote normal.
Yeah. So there's a long story behind this actually. So there's don't know if you're from, of course, the Adidas Atlanta City games that just happened. And
Right.
the first year they did that, they broadcast it on Adidas's YouTube channel. You know, Adidas has 1.2 million subscribers to their YouTube channel. So a lot of people getting notifications and, you know, wanting to watch it, but they're not necessarily a lot of big track and field fans, right? It's just more people that follow Adidas for whatever reason. It could be soccer, football, basketball, whatever. They follow Adidas, but doesn't really target all the track and field fans. So this past year, or this past April, the Miramar meet had reached out to me and said, hey, we've got a broadcast team, but we don't have anywhere to put this meet. And I said, well, hey, I have this idea. Let's put it on Masai Russell's YouTube channel. Like Masai has, at the time, had 44,000 subscribers to her YouTube channel. And she has, between all her social media platforms, almost 1 million followers. I'm like, we can put it up on her site. 44,000 people get notification that she's going live. And then plus she can promote it to the almost 1 million followers that she has. And they say, hey, this is a great idea. So they decided, all right, let's do it. And Masai promoted it only within 24 hours of the event. She did, so no lead time promoting it or anything like that, and put it up on her YouTube channel, and it had over 230,000 viewers, which is crazy because it actually tripled the number that Adidas had, even though Adidas has 20 times her followers, right? Or 20 times her subscribers. So I think Adidas, they took the lesson from that. And this year when they did the Adidas City Games, they put it on both Adidas's platform and Noah Lyle's, right? Because that's where you're getting the true track and field fans.
Right.
So what we're going to do this year is basically give it to everybody for free and give them the rights to the footage for free and have everybody promote it and broadcast it. So Total Running Productions is doing it. Flow Track is doing it. Sidious Mag is doing it. Track Alerts and PUMA and American Track League. So we're putting it out on all these different YouTube channels. And then even there's a few other channels we're talking to that may pick it up, like Vizio TV and a couple others, so that we're going to be accessible to everybody. And then everybody that's broadcasting it is also motivated to promote it as well.
Sure.
We have this multi-arm group that's promoting the meet and broadcasting it. So yeah, there's, you know, oftentimes there's the people will sign on, oh, hey, I want to see this meet. Where can I find it? And they can't find it, or it's blocked or geo-blocked or something like that. This is going to be accessible to everybody, and then everybody's going to promote it. And then even after the fact, after the race is done, all these entities that we've given this to, like all the big media platforms in track and field, they have the rights to use all the footage. So they're going to cut highlight tapes and short clips and do shows with talkovers and whatnot. So the amount of impact and exposure the meet's going to get after the fact is going to be absolutely massive.
That's awesome. That is awesome on so many levels. Hey, you're listening to Just a Cup on Bleav. Every team, every topic, everywhere. I'm Bryan Fetzer. I have with me the founder of the American Track League and the head of Doyle Management Group, Paul Doyle. We're talking about track and field, and we're talking about their big meet that's coming up on the 31st of May, which is the Edwin Moses Legends Classic, or Edwin Moses Legends Meet. And he just said it's gonna be broadcast literally almost anywhere you want. You can pick it up and, you know, looking at almost any YouTube channel and different varieties, which is very, it's so unique, but it's also so brilliant with the fact that, you know, your advertising comes from within. It comes from all the athletes and individuals, which social media, as we know now, that is kind of the king and queen of promotions. And, you know, them getting to broadcast it and kind of sharing, having media content out there is pretty amazing. What else can you expect from the meet itself? You know, you have a flair for doing some unique things. Is there anything else going to be there other than having all these legends which you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, the typical entertainment value will be there as well. So we'll have DJs, we're going to have dancers, possibly a live band and everything on the infield. We're going to pull fans out of the stands, have giveaways, stuff like that. That stuff will always be present as well. But we're really trying to fill that stadium. You know, it's a 10,000 seat grandstand stadium, and there's such a buzz in the city already starting about this, and a lot of groups reaching out saying, hey, how can we volunteer? How can we get our kids involved and that sort of thing? So we are running some feature high school races ahead of the pro section. Nice. So the first hour will actually be some pretty unbelievable high school races. We do have Christian Miller coming, the sprint superstar, ran 993 already. He's running in the pro section, but we are having high school 100s, 400s, and sprint hurdles. So some pretty phenomenal athletes. I think that men's 400 at the high school division is going to challenge the pro division, right? I think there's 3 guys there that have already run 45 seconds in the high school division. So yeah, it's phenomenal.
Well, I mean, let me ask you, like, you get to see kind of, I would say, the evolution of track and field. It's gotten crazy. The performance, what was phenomenal. I mean, I think of the women's hurdles. You know, what was great 15 years ago isn't even there anymore.
It's unreal.
What event have you seen that's kind of just absolutely taken off, or events that are just so much different from when you first got into the sport, in the management, even in the coaching side of things?
Yeah, it's crazy. I wish I could tell you why, right? But the women's 100 hurdles is just off the charts crazy now, right? You know, Lolo Jones she's been an athlete through the whole thing, right? She's 41 years old now, almost breaking 13 seconds, which is phenomenal, right? Yes. But then you think, even when she was at her best, she was the #1 hurdler in the world. She ran 12:43 at her best. I think there's 11 girls already this year that have run that, or something crazy like that. It's I actually use my wife's statistic to tell people how much the sport is advanced. So Rashida Adeleke from University of Texas just last year broke my wife's Irish record in the 400 indoors, right?
Okay.
So 22 years ago, my wife had run 51.58 at Virginia Tech in the 400. At the time she ran that, it was the 5th fastest time ever run on American soil, blazing fast back then. This year at indoor NCAAs, it would have been 6th in the heat, right?
Like Arkansas, like 4 girls that run
fastest time ever run, right?
Yeah,
but yeah, and then I think both the men's and the women's 400 hurdles have changed tremendously. You know, Karsten Warholm running 45 seconds in the 400 hurdles is insane. I mean, Sydney, this is some discussions, and people are talking about Sydney actually running 49 seconds for the 400 hurdles. You know, keep in mind when she started racing, the world record was 52.5 seconds, right? So you're talking about taking 2.5 seconds off of a 400 world record. It's mind blowing, but really, when you think about it, like in an open 4, it's not unrealistic to think you could see Sydney running 48 flat, right? And if she can, why not run 49 point? She should.
Right. No, it is true. I mean, you think about, like, why has it changed so much? I mean, it seems like the women's side of things, and obviously I think that's because of, you know, there wasn't that, I mean, Title IX and all that came into it. There wasn't as many opportunities, and females didn't really have a chance to do it for so long. But the trajectory of how the women's sport is going is absolutely just ridiculous.
All right. Since I threw out a stat, right, I got to throw out another one. Now, this is a men's event, a very traditional men's event, the men's shot put, right?
Okay.
That has completely changed as well.
Yes.
You know, I remember if you threw 20-40, you'd make the final at the Worlds or Olympics. You'd make the top 12. Not anymore, right?
No.
But
no.
Ryan, so this is the stat. Prior to Ryan Krauser, the most competitions anybody had ever thrown 22 meters in their career was 16. Christian Cantwell had done it 16 times in his career, and Werner Gunther had done it 16 times in their career, indoors and out, over their entire career. How many times has Ryan Krauser thrown 22 meters?
I have no clue, but I'm sure it's more than 16.
Take a stab. It is more than 16.
I would say maybe like 25.
254.
That wasn't even remotely close.
254 times he's thrown over 22 meters. Yeah. So
that is crazy.
Yeah. And now that, you know, that they also have, like, Peyton Otterdahl now is throwing almost every throw over 22 meters. Joe Kovac's hitting 22.93 again. Like they're all throwing bombs these days.
When
There's
the
so
Italian
many guys that are 22-meter throwers now.
Well, you mentioned Christian Cantwell, and I've seen footage of his son, who's phenomenal in high school.
Yeah.
I mean, what he's doing. I mean, he's got a shot at potentially getting that high school national record in a shot, which would be crazy. That Michael Carter set way back in the day.
Yeah, I think Jackson has thrown 22.80. I think so. And it's so funny for me because Christian and I are in the same fantasy football league. And we have quite the chat going in the WhatsApp chat going in that league. And I remember Jackson when he was like 7 years old chiming in on the chat and stuff like that. So I had some banter with Jackson back then, and now he's a monster. He's 6'8", 300 pounds or something like that.
No, I mean, it was funny. It was maybe like 2 years ago or a year ago. It was probably when he was a freshman. And a guy I used to coach with, Phil Wickwar, is a coach at Nixa High School, or he was the old football coach at Nixa High School. And he kind of, he goes, "Hey, there's a kid that, is unbelievable. His dad was a really good shot putter too." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." So he tells me who it is. And I'm like, "No, his dad wasn't a really good shot putter. His dad was phenomenal. Like one of the best there is." He's like, "Oh yeah, but so I mean, you could see that, and then you're starting to have athletes that were phenomenal athletes, marrying other phenomenal athletes. And now the kids are growing up, and it's definitely within the football and the track space. And it's kind of impressive to kind of see that. After the Edwin Moses meet, is there any other American Track League meets post?
Yeah, there are. We have 2 in July, so we're really the only 2 professional meets in the region, in the whole NACAC region, North America region, between the trials and the Olympics. So on July 11th through 13th, we're having the big Ed Murphy Classic in Memphis. So we have a lot of high school events on the Thursday, the Friday night pro track meet in the stadium, and then Saturday the Beale Street Games, where we have road mile and street vault. That's a really fun meet right on Beale Street. And then a week later, we're doing 1 week out from the Olympic opening ceremonies. We're doing the Holloway Pro Classic, named, of course, after Mike Holloway, at University of Florida in Gainesville. So that'll be a perfect final tune-up for athletes that are leaving. It's 2 weeks before track and field starts at the Olympics, but 1 week before opening ceremonies. It's going to create an opportunity for athletes that are unfortunate enough to not make the Olympic team. They still have a place to compete, to get through the season and get to the post-Olympic events and that sort of thing. So I really feel like those 2 meets are going to be huge, but they're also going to be a little bit last minute. When we got to see who makes the Olympic team first, and let the schedules be set immediately after that.
Well, you just mentioned the Beale Street, the street meet. Having been around, some of the pole vaults and such, we were actually talking about the Omaha pole vault that was done a couple weeks ago when I had Chris Nielsen and Austin Miller and Matt Ludwig on. And, what are some other things that we could do as a sport, or that could be done as a sport, track and field, on the street side, to kind of bring it more to the individual that's, that maybe, hey, when I was in middle school, I did track, but wants to have an event. I mean, talk about like the street part of things and bringing it kind of to the people.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, you were involved in our Liberty Bridge jump off that we did in South Carolina, and Sandy Morris's hometown. And, I think the police told us after that we had more than 10,000 people there, just in a spot where you can fit 4,000 people, right? Like they were crammed in there. The atmosphere was awesome. And there's really, I think our sport is so unique and so phenomenal when you can see it up close. The unfortunate thing is, you're in a big stadium, usually so far away, watching a 400-meter track. But when you bring it to the people and you bring it into these small, intimate venues, it's so impressive what they do. Like, you take any lay person and you put them, 2 or 3 meters away from a pole vault stand, and you look up and see how high they jump, it'll blow their mind. But I also feel other events are that way too, when you can get people close to it. Javelin. I remember when I was throwing javelin myself as a decathlete, and I get to throw against Tom Puxtus, and my goal was to not lose by more than 100 feet. And I failed at that goal, but just seeing that javelin fly from close, it opened up my mind to what's possible, unbelievable.
How hard is it to put on one of those meets? How hard to get, you see what's happening like at the Adidas games in Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
It's in the street, how they had the meet in Boston and stuff like that. Cities events seem to enjoy that kind of an atmosphere. Why isn't there more of that?
Yeah, there needs to be, because honestly, to me, they're easier to put on. Okay, maybe more physical labor, but
Right.
They're easier to put on than a stadium event, honestly, especially when you're talking about the pole vault. Like, to me, the pole vault is the easiest and most impressive of all the street meets, and that's why the pole vault is featured at so many. I would estimate that there's probably 30 street vaults in America throughout the year. But they're sort of hyper local on the marketing and that sort of thing. So there was a group, and we've had an idea recently to start a whole pole vault tour specifically in streets, and I think it would be phenomenal. Because like I said, it is the most impressive event up close and personal that you could ever imagine. So that's something that's been in the works. And another group actually launched a similar idea. It didn't get off the ground this year, but they were close. So hopefully we can all work together and next year get this thing going, where we have a U.S. pole vault tour.
So how can track and field do a better job of getting out to the masses and just more exposure? What do you think is a way to get that to happen?
Yeah, I think we need to get ahead of the game, right? The viewership has been changing tremendously through the years, and it seems like we're always a half step behind. And even when I started the American Track League, streaming really wasn't a thing. It barely was 11 years ago, right? And look how far we've come in essentially a decade. But even I look back to 2 years ago, when we were on ESPN, being on ESPN was the best thing for the sport, right? We had Heather McLean, one of my 1,500 meter runners from New Balance Olympian. Heather came to one of our meets and ran the 800, and then she got a direct message on Instagram after from some kid that went to Penn State, and he said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I was in our dining hall, and your race came on TV, and I got the whole dining hall to cheer for you, and you won. It was awesome." Like they said, the whole dining hall at Penn State was going nuts for Heather McLean, and that's only because it was on ESPN, right? ESPN linear TV is in every single sports bar in America. It's in dining halls at Penn State. It's on, it's basically everywhere. And that is what makes our sport to reach outside of the typical fan base. What we're doing this year with the American Track League is giving it to all the fans, but that's not helping us necessarily draw new fans into the sport. It's just satisfying our current fans. So we've got to figure out a way to reach out to the outside force. And of course, this year being an Olympic year, 4 years from now, we have an Olympics in the US. This is our prime opportunity to get exposure for the sport, because everyone's going to want a piece of it over the next 4 years until the LA Games. So this is when we really have to capitalize and start promoting the athletes and promoting the sport. So making it accessible and getting exposure is the big thing. We cannot be short-sighted and take small money to get to get small money for the rights to the viewership. We need to look at the biggest viewership possible. And that's, if you look at the case I always bring up is Wimbledon tennis tournament. So Wimbledon tennis tournament has always been on British Broadcasting, the BBC, for years and years and years. And Sky Sports came in, which was a cable station that was, a subscription service that came on to TVs all across the UK and Ireland, all that. And Sky Sports came in and offered Wimbledon 3 times the amount of money that the BBC was paying them. And they turned it down. And that was the best move they ever could have made, because if they'd done the Sky Sports deal at the time, they would have gone from being in 40 million households in the UK to 20,000. And then their sponsors would have went away because they would have lost the exposure. And that, to me, is what the problem we have with track and field is we're behind paywalls, and we're limiting people getting access to our sport. It's like we're trying to keep the sport secret and only give it to the few people that are willing to pay a few pennies for it, right? Whereas what we really should be doing is just getting exposure for the sport and getting exposure for our athletes and making their names well known.
Well, I mean, if you look at it just with YouTube, you get paid on viewership. You get paid on the number of people, the influencers and stuff like that. You're getting paid on how many hours people watch it, how many clicks you get, and those kind of things. It's not necessarily on, hey, it's just the track and field fan or just the specific fan. I mean, you see how big the UFC is, and some of the other sports that really started from nothing and now are, I mean, absolutely massive.
Yeah. I mean, if we adopted immediately the UFC model of being behind a paywall, a pay-per-view event, it would fall flat on its face, because we haven't built up the fan base yet. And, there's a lot of things that are starting to happen now that will help. Like the Box to Box Films has come out with the Netflix series that's about to launch July 2nd. So immediately after the US trials, that show is launching. And you've seen what that's done for Formula One and for the other sports that they've done. So, but that's just the first one that's going to be really big. And that's just looking at the sprinters. Now there's groups starting to do ones on the hurdlers, so we've got to get a lot of content out there and let our athletes be known and, educate the world on who these athletes are.
Well, there's personalities, and there's some great personalities in track and field.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And, I mean, it's just, it's a shame that we don't publicize, or there's not that publicize as much as they should be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Paul, I appreciate you coming on and chatting up and talking track and field and talking about vision and talking about everything that it kind of is. And just another reminder about the Edwin Moses Legends Meet. Can you give a quick, hey, where can they get it? Where can they get tickets? How can we get it done?
You can get tickets. Just go to AmericanTrackLeague.com. All the information is there, but you can click through to get tickets for the event. We're hoping to have a sellout, 10,000 seats. It's going to be, meet and greets with legends of the sport. You'll get to see Sydney McLaughlin. I'd say, listen, she's run 2 races this year. She ran a big PB in the 100-meter hurdles in her first race, a big PB in the 200 in her second race. This will be her first 400 hurdle race. If she runs a PB, what's that? It's a world record, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to be there to see history being made, you should be there on Friday night.
So May 31st at the Morehouse Track in Atlanta, Georgia. Come out and watch the American Track League at its finest. Hey, you've listened to Just a Cup on Bleav. Bryan Fetzer was here with Paul Doyle, and we appreciate you coming. Make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, and share this, especially share this one, because you're going to be helping the sport of track and field get some more viewership. So have a great one, everyone, and be blessed.